Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Coded Steel, and welcome back to another App Inventor tutorial. And a very long time since I've made an App Inventor tutorial, honestly. So my apologies for the long pause. I've been trying to kind of send some messages back and forth to some of you guys that have been asking questions, but man, I just had quite a bit going on over the last year, and I came out with a new series, and I've had this application done for quite some time. I just never got up the time necessary to actually show you guys how it works. I am starting something new because you guys mentioned on some of my other videos that you would be interested to have some of the source code for applications. So for this video, I'm going to give you guys the link. And we posted in the description at the bottom the source code for this. So you guys know, or you're familiar with my style of how I do things. Most of the time I use the videos to explain how the stuff works and how it works the way it is, and what you can modify to change the code, easily, so you guys don't have to look around maybe to figure out what it is to change in order to make specific things happen. So what we can kind of see here is you guys can kind of see we've got the login screen here, and basically this is the web login screen, pretty much the exact same way it was before. I think originally it might have had some kind of a bug or something, but that's been worked out in this version. There is no longer any kind of bug or anything in here, but yeah, anytime you guys find stuff that doesn't work in a specific way, let me know, and I'll quickly try to get that stuff corrected and re-upload the source code so you guys have access to working applications that you can use and you can build off of. Alright, so as you can see, this screen is very similar to the web login screen that we had, with the label down here that tells you whether you're logging in and all that good stuff. So nothing really different here. We've got this web database, and we got a clock that fires every couple seconds and whatever. So nothing too out of the ordinary here. You guys have seen this before. Another one of the screens that's not new is the register screen. The register screen is exactly the same as really it's always been. I'll put a text box, label, text box, label, text box, label, 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 text box. And then when you register, you'll either get this notifier telling you, that name already exists or something along those lines. So if we look at the code for the register screen, it should be the exact same as what it's always been. You have this button that you push. It checks these text fields, text box 1, text box 2, which is the confirmation of the username and the username. Checks to make sure they're equal. Checks to make sure the passwords are equal so you don't accidentally mistype something and create a username you didn't intend to create. And then that will turn around and store, or actually it's going to get that value first. And the reason, you guys already know, I think, why we get this value. We're essentially looking to make sure that this tag doesn't exist. If it does, we've got a problem, Houston, and we don't want to allow somebody to overwrite that username specifically. So we get this. If the tag's not null, then we turn around and we make a new username for that person, and we go on with life. And then if not, the username already exists. There you go. So pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. It's nothing you guys haven't seen before, like I had been saying. Then the other screen we've got is our screen 1, which I call it. And that screen is nothing really complicated either. You just got the user, the pass, and then when you log in, you set the label to nothing. When the button 2 is clicked, which is the register button, it just takes you to the other screen. So that's the sign up button. Nothing too out of the ordinary there. Whenever you enter stuff in the text field, so as soon as you enter your username and your password, you already know I hit the sign in, what happens when I hit the button for signing it in. It immediately tries to get the value for the username, and then it sets the timer, and then it sets this text to logging in for the label. Soon as the value comes back, it checks to see whether or not it's a list. If we don't check and see if it's a list, sometimes you'll get an error. Well, you'll get an error if you get a null in the database, so we don't want nulls. So I have to check and make sure that the list is actually, the something is actually a list. If it's not a list, then we don't want to do anything. Otherwise, it'll throw an error and it'll exit the application automatically. We don't want that. So this is all not new stuff. It's all part of that other web login stuff that you guys have seen in the past. And then we've got this clock timer, which is the only reason this clock timer is here is if we don't have it. What I found in the past is that if this event will take place, we got to have a way to turn around and say logging in and clear the logging in and all of that stuff. If I don't have this timer here, sometimes it will read the database and then it won't jump to the new screen, or it creates some kind of mess. So this is more or less for just stability's sake and to show you that the application's kind of working at doing what it is it needs to do. So you kind of put this little bit of a delay in here because my experience has been in the past, if I try to turn around and do something inside of statements like this, it causes problems. So this is more of a stability thing, which you guys, I think I've explained this in a previous video. So turns around, sets the timer enabled back to false, gets the global username, checks all this stuff to make sure that it's your password and your username. This is all different ways, so you can't swap the username and the password. You guys know this and have seen this. And then stores that information, changes your status to true, so your status is online. We'll talk about that later. And then opens another screen, the friend list screen, and with the start value of the text box 1, which is your username. And if none of that stuff works, then it says login failed. Switches the text to login failed. So you guys have seen all this stuff before. There should be nothing new here. The next screen we move on to is the friends list screen. So that's where we go from there. Friends list screen is very simple. We've got a list view component. We've got a table arrangement component, which is just used for this. And then we've got a text box 1, the add friend button, the tiny web database, and the notifier component. So nothing too splendid on this screen. It's pretty simple. And now I guess we'll get into discussing what happens here. So the friends list screen is just like stuff would be on any app, as you might guess. It lists your friends. Facebook would list your. You can go and you can click on your friends list or whatever in Facebook and view your friends. Well, this is similar to that. It views the people that you have as friends on your database or in your app for your application. So you can kind of see this. We just start by creating this variable and an empty list. Then we initialize. When we initialize the screen, we immediately look for the username friends list. So what this is we're essentially we're storing a list. Okay, we're storing a list of your friends that you have for the application. This is when the screen loads, you want to immediately load your friends list, and if you don't have one, it'll just load nothing. It'll just continue to be an empty list. But we initially want to turn around and try to initialize some kind of a friends list. So that's what we do here. And then when we do that, we check and we make sure that it's equal to the friends list and that it's not a null. And then we say set the global friends list and set the list view. So the list view will populate the friends. So pretty simple, straightforward, nothing too spectacular there. Once the friends list is loaded, you would then be able to, from there, you could select a friend and it would take you to the chat screen. And then if they're online, if your specific friend is online, it'll display a little circle and then a corner, which we'll talk about, and I'll show you guys later. But from there, you click it and it'll take you to the chat screen. So if you have a friend, if you don't have a friend, well, you've got to register a friend. So how do we do that? So how we register a friend is you have that text box that you guys can see here. You enter the username of that friend. And then when you click add, it checks the text box to make sure it's not equal to the start value. Well, the start value is, again, your username. You don't want to be able to add yourself as a friend. At least I would think you wouldn't want to. So you have to have some kind of error checking for that. And this is the best way to do it, is just to say, hey, You can't add yourself as a friend. Not going to happen. And we're not going to allow you to add a friend if your friends list is already 10 people. So if it's less than 10 people, not a problem. We'll let you add a friend. If it's more than 10 people, we're not going to let it happen. Why did I do that? Mostly it's just to limit the amount of tags that are in my database. I have not done any kind of experimentation to figure out how high you could drive this number up. But if you wanted to make it to where you could add more friends, this would be the spot where you would change it to like 20, or, you know, if you wanted to do 2,000, you could have 2,000 friends. I don't know. But for simplicity's sake, I'm going to keep it at 10. You guys are more than welcome. Obviously, you're going to have this code, and you're going to have access to this code when I'm done. So you'll be able to turn around and modify all the stuff that I'm talking about and test it for your own application. And make it better or do whatever it is you want to do. This is just giving you a baseline. And then you've got this one as well, this greater than 10. You would obviously want to change this to whatever number you change that to, so we don't call this statement X, or we would call this all these statements appropriately at the on the conditions we want them to. So this is where you would modify the length of your friends list if you really wanted to. Next thing we do here is if your friends list is less than 10, and it's not equal to your username, then we're going to look for that friend. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to look for that friend. And if we find that friend, which would be if the tag from the web database is equal to textbox1 and it's not equal to null, that is where we're doing the friends list checking stuff. So we're just checking to make sure that the text box 1.text, which is, that's not what I want to do, which is the information that's entered in this field, is equal to the database. And the reason we got to do that is because we don't want to accidentally call one of these other statements. So we have to make it specific case for itself. And it's not equal to null. Then we're going to add that item to the global friends list, and we're going to add that item to that list. And then we're going to set the list elements to this. So that's going to essentially update this list that appears here on the screen. It's going to add that friend to that list, and then the list will gradually obviously expand and get longer. So up until this point, I think it's been probably pretty simple to understand. And then what will happen likewise here on this screen is the notifier will let you know if what's in the text field is equal to the thing and the value from the web database is nothing, it's a null, there's nothing there, then that is what the database gives us. So if you guys might remember, the way the App Inventor database works is if a tag does not exist, it's going to return null. There's going to be nothing there in that field. So this is our null, essentially, and we're going to check and see, oh, okay, this is empty. That means that that tag doesn't exist, so we say this username doesn't exist, which means that user doesn't exist, obviously. So nobody would log in as that ever. So we want to be able to prevent that, and that's our checking for that type of stuff. So you have a little notifier that comes across the screen and says, hey, this username does not exist. The other thing we have down here is, we talked about this, if your friend's count is greater than 10, it's going to check the length of the list, and it's going to say, hey, it's greater than or equal to 10, you've reached the maximum friend limit. We can't let you add any new friends. And that's just, like I said, to prevent clustering or clutter of data. And then finally, the last thing down here in this add block is you can't add yourself as a friend. So if I enter in my own name, which, for example, it's going to be, I don't know, Coded Steel. If Coded Steel gets entered into the blank there, it's going to say, hey, you know, that's equal to the start value. So I'm not going to pass this condition. And the length of the friends list is whatever, not greater, or is greater than 10 or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then you can't add yourself as a friend is going to be the statement that it will essentially call. So honest to goodness, in this scenario, if I entered Coded Steel into the field, the way this code is set up right now, and I might change this later before I post it, but if I were going to add this code, I would also want to check and make sure that this condition is also false, or this condition is, also not true, because I don't want to turn around and say, hey, you've reached the maximum friend limit. Although technically, in a certain condition, these might both be true. I would generally want to defer to this statement if I entered encoded steel in there, but that could be your preference. Right now, the way it would work, if I entered my own name in, it would default to this statement first, because this is the first else statement after the if. So it would check this first, and then if all else fails, then it goes to this. So really, I would probably want to add an and this with this statement here to check and make sure that I'm not entered in the text field, and then if I am, then I jump to this. But I'm just going to leave it this way. No big deal. If you guys want to change it, that's how you would change it, though. An and statement, this and this part anded together, and then assigned here, and that would fix that. So anyways, moving on. We already know after you pick somebody, we're going to head to that screen. So that's where we're going. Going to go to the chat screen. Chat screens where all the chatting stuff takes place. That's where the most complicated part of the application is in this part. So we're going to go through each of these components pretty quickly so we don't go real slow, but at the same time I want to make sure you guys understand it. So we've got a horizontal arrangement with a button in there that says sign out. Obviously that's probably where you would sign out. I think that makes sense to you guys. We've got this canvas that's going to be filled up with a bunch of goodies and whatever else. As far as just really the only goodie is just a circle, a red or a green circle, signifying whether the person you're talking to is online or offline. We'll get into more of that later. You got another arrangement here. It's probably, yeah, got a table arrangement and a text box and a button in there for this would be where you enter your text and you send it. It's pretty self-explanatory, I would think. And then you finally have got your tiny web database, your clock, your tiny database on your device. I'm not even really sure if I use that. Really? Well, it's there. I don't think it gets used. In fact, I'm pretty sure it doesn't get used. It might have gotten added on accident. Yeah, it doesn't look like it gets used. Because most of the stuff I wanted to store on the website, yeah, it doesn't. I'm going to leave it, but I'm pretty sure you guys can remove it and it won't affect any of the code. It's there. I'm going to leave it for not wrecking anything as of right now. And then you got your sound component. And your sound, basically in this case, the sound is just going to be a vibration. If you're using a tablet, it's possible some tablets don't support vibration. I know you guys were talking, I mentioned something about the Time Picker app where we made an alarm clock. Somebody had mentioned that some of the stuff wasn't sounding and whatever else. It might be because your tablet doesn't support vibration feature, but I think I had a sound in there. My sound worked. I'm not really sure what was going on there. Maybe you didn't have your volume turned up. I don't know. But in all cases, I think all devices have speakers, you know, tablets or whatever, so you should be able to get a sound. But I don't think in all cases they have vibration built in. I know phones will, but I don't know about tablets. Some probably do and some probably don't. But that is what we're going to be doing is just vibrating. We don't actually have a specific sound, although you guys could add one and replace the vibration stuff that I do. I'll show you where to do that and replace that. And then you got the notifier component again. So, all right. And then you've got a bunch of text labels. We got 20 of them that are all just going to be right here. And they're just going to turn around and they're going to be where the text stuff goes. You know, nothing too special there, really. This is where the stuff gets kind of juicy. So when we come into this screen, obviously the first block that's going to run is the initialization block. You guys know that by now. Essentially, the first thing it's going to do is go global the message, and it's going to say, hey, this tiny web database, I'm going to get the start value 1 and start value 2, 1 and 2, and then the last message. So I should have mentioned that, but in the last screen, the friends list screen here, we pass the list view selection and the start value from this screen, which is your name, to the new screen. So we're passing the person you're chatting with and you to this screen. So you will be in position 1, your name will be in position 1, the person you're talking to will be in position 2, and then the last message that you guys exchanged will be what we're joining together. And then we're going to look for that tag in the database. If there's nothing there, which on first time communicating with that person, there won't be, then it's just going to be nothing. There'll be nothing on the screen. Kind of makes sense. And then from there, we're going to call get value the status and get value the chat history. So status is what we were talking about before. This is going to be your true false. Is that person online or is that person offline? If the person's online, we're going to populate the screen with a green dot. If the person's offline, we're going to populate the screen with a red dot. So we're just looking at that person's status. Your status gets changed on the very first screen after you log in. I don't know if I really mentioned that, but there's a status block that gets changed to true right here. This is your status. I think I did talk about that, but that's where the green or the red dot is going to get chosen, is via this flag bit here being set. I'll call it a bit, but it's a tag. That tag is being set. So here we're finally making use of that stuff. We're looking at the person we're chatting with, their status, to decide whether or not they're online or offline. And then depending on that, we're going to set green or red. But we'll get more into that stuff in just a second. And then the other thing we're going to do is load the chat history. So my username, person's username, and then the chat history. So that's a unique tag that gets stored in the database that has all of the messages, and not all, only 20. The last 20 that went back and forth. After that, we throw data out. We'll discuss where that stuff can get changed and how you can add more of that, but right now it only supports 20 messages. And like I've said, it's not really formatted extremely well. I just built something that worked because I did get responses for people wanting to implement things like this. So I just wanted to get something out there to you guys. And if you get